Hi, everybody. Sorry for cutting your break short, but bring it all with you. We're right here waiting for you. Great to see all of you today. I think most of you know me. I am Porter Anderson, Editor-in-Chief at Publishing Perspectives. We are a project of Frankfurter Buchmesse, and we were created about 15 years ago. We are online every day, Monday through Friday, and free to read in the international spectrum of publishing. So I hope you'll come and see us if you haven't already. And with me today, I have two really special guests who are going to tell us an awful lot about innovation. And I found that as we were doing our preparatory material, they're wonderfully forthcoming. They're very, very candid. They're willing to say the kind of things that we often feel some folks don't feel comfortable about. And innovation is an interesting topic in that regard because in a way, we feel like we've been talking innovation our entire lives, right? And you get to a point at which you think we already innovated that. We're innovating the innovation. And it gets to a point, particularly feeling cyclical, when you remember what we call the digital transition. Remember that period when we had nothing but digital on conference stages like this one? And then there was a whole pushback, and then everybody got comfortable with digital. The pandemic came in. And all of a sudden, a lot of people were saying, all is forgiven. Digital had helped with the retail side of publishing in a tremendous way, particularly in the markets that were already digitally adept, that had, if you will, a trained audience that knew how to get its material digitally and to stay with you. So it is interesting, and it will be interesting as we go into what seems to be an AI age, to see if there's not a similar cycle in which we all finally get comfortable, the problems are worked out, we feel we're there, and then in some way, it begins to prove itself in things we don't expect. This should be fascinating. Innovation, and the people who work in it, like Anna and like Sarah, are the places you will be seeing this kind of thing first, too. It's a bit like the sandbox in any good company. You start watching there because things are going to come across more quickly that are reflected later in just what was being developed. Now, seated here in the center with me is Sarah Arbuthnot. How'd I do?
Hi, Porter.
Wonderful Scottish last name. And she's joining us from Supadu. And then from Hachette Livre, we have Anna Lemp. And Anna and I have been talking back and forth about a lot of things because one of the things you'll discover as we talk to her is that she's touching on almost every part of that enormous company. It's quite interesting. And so one of the nicest things about the comparative comments of our two guests here is that you're going to find you're hearing from a company that's very targeted in what it does for a very specific part of the market, primarily small and medium publishers. And then you're going to hear from one of the very biggest publishers, one of the big five, one of the big four, depending where you are. And this is a great comparative exercise, as well as it is just a really good moment to check up on where we are with innovation and what we should be thinking about. I want to start by briefly asking Sarah and then Anna first, and then Sarah, just to tell us a little bit about themselves, how you came to be in the work you're in, and what your work encompasses. How do you see it as going together? I'm starting with Anna only because Hachette, of course, is the better known company than Supadu. And then we will learn from Sarah more about Supadu as she talks to us. So Anna, tell us about your work.
Great. So hi, everyone. My name is Anna. I currently work for Hachette Livre. I've been there for 6 years now, and I work on their innovation and corporate strategy team. A little bit about my background. I studied creative writing and entrepreneurship and management, which is funnily quite aligned with what I do now. And I found during those studies that I really liked the marriage of creativity and practicality. And that led me to my first role at The Atlantic. So it's a big magazine in the US, and I was seeing the transition that they were going through from a political publication, which was printed weekly, into a membership model. So already starting to see the forces at play in the media landscape. Then I went to another type of storytelling, and I moved into video production, and I was a producer. All that to end up at Hachette with books, which are personally my favorite medium and way of storytelling. So our team at Hachette is a small team of 6 people. We're international, all based in Paris, and we work across all of Hachette's many offices, so the largest ones being in Spain, in France, in the UK, and in the US. And we work cross-functionally, as Porter mentioned, with a lot of different teams around the company. Our mission is to identify growth opportunities, to support diversification, and to spread a culture of innovation in the company internally. And that team has existed actually for a very long time. The program was started in 2015. We do our work in a number of different ways, and it changes according to the trends of the time. But primarily, we do a lot of research where we look at trends and technologies that are poised to disrupt publishing or the broader industries around us. And we write up reports and share those with our colleagues so they feel prepared to deal with those changes. We run projects and proofs of concepts to tackle key issues like something like backlist traction or AI, for example. And we run those with specific publishers, and if they're successful, share them with our other imprints and share learnings as well as failures. Failures are a big part of innovation. We also act as a bridge with startups. So we meet, I think in the past 6 years since I've been on the team, we've probably met 500 startups and big tech players. And so we act as a bridge between that ecosystem and our publishers, introducing them and running projects when applicable. And then lastly, on the point of infusing innovation into the company, we have done things. I think the best example of this would be we ran an innovation challenge globally about 3 years ago now, where we invited all 7,000 Hachette employees all over the world to submit ideas to us within a few topics. And then we had a board that selected 4 winning projects, and we worked on those, funded those, and provided operational support for those projects during a period of 2 years. So we like to hear from everyone in the company, and that's why our work is so fun.
That's great. Just a couple of quick questions. From within the company, do you get kind of a waiting list of people saying, we're really interested in trying this, can you help us and bring a project in with us?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting to see. It depends on the phase and sort of what's happening. Since AI has become a big thing on the scene, we've gotten a lot of questions and people asking us about it and seeing how we can help them. So it depends what's happening in the broader environment, if they want our support or not. But yeah, we have a lot of interest, and we try to work. We're obviously a small team working with a lot of people around the world, so we do our best to treat all those asks.
Probably this gives you such an interesting oversight of the entire company because you're working in so many of the departments and everything. You're aware of where they are and their pressure points are. This is useful. Does management occasionally come to you and say, what do you think you're seeing in this department? Because this is really interesting what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting role to be in. As I said in the Innovation Challenge, for example, we really talk to every level of the company. So we're asking people at the intern level to come forward with ideas who haven't worked in publishing very long and might have a new perspective, as well as talking to top management about our strategy and making sure our projects align with that. So yeah, we're really all over the place.
It's really fantastic. Yeah. It sounds great because you get to try so many different things, too.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not the same job every day.
It changes quite a bit, yes.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. Thanks, Anna. Yeah. Now, Sarah, I have to tell you that because Supadu is still relatively new to me, as it is to many of our audience members, when I first heard Supadu, I thought it was Subaru. And I thought, this is great because maybe Sarah could get me into a car before the tariffs kick in, you know? Turns out not. There is no Supadu car, is there?
No,
I've missed
not
it.
yet.
No. But could you tell us what that name is? What does it mean? Where does it come from?
We were talking about this yesterday, actually. So there's a few explanations, I guess, from its conception. It's like, yes, we're super dupers, we're super everything, we are super doers. So we've always been in the world of web. So it was born in 2010. It doesn't actually have a specific meaning, but it's definitely super doers, super do, yes. And actually, in 2022, before I go into my background, Supadu was purchased by MediaDo. In fact, MediaDo International, which is owned by MediaDo Japan. So we are now more doers. Yeah. And they obviously own the Firebrand Group and NetGalley and Flywheel as well. So Supadu went from being quite a small company to part of a very large company.
Can Megado be far behind, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure it's coming.
exactly.
Exactly. Tell us more about yourself and about what you're actually doing.
So I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Supadu. So I've been at Supadu for many years, originally when it was kind of, I guess, a startup in a part-time capacity. Prior to that, I used to work in advertising, online advertising. So my background and career was very much in cross-platform marketing and selling fast-moving consumer goods to consumers. So Nike, Adidas, Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble. So that's my background, and that's what I have been bringing to Supadu and to publishers, of how to sell books.
And you've been with Supadu how long?
Since 2010 when it launched, but as I said, in a part-time capacity back then.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And talk to us about the nature and the thrust of what the company is doing.
Yes.
I know you're on the web. You're working in web design in some cases.
So we do three things. So it's metadata automation. So it's all about helping publishers be discoverable. We work with publishers all over the world. So it's not just English publishers. Our biggest market is North America and Europe, or kind of more so UK based. But we are expanding into everything. So we do metadata discoverability and automation. We do websites, so we build websites, and we do e-commerce. So we're integrated with many, many different distributors, fulfillment providers in multiple formats. So our whole ethos is helping publishers sell books to retailers. And within that, we do quite a lot of innovation. So for instance, on the e-commerce side, we have things which we call smart buy buttons, and hopefully some people have heard about these around. So it's helping publishers think a bit more like retailers and having that one-click purchase. So if you consider being on Instagram and you see a book, click the purchase and it's sent to your distributor or fulfillment partner. That's where we're trying to go.
And I assume that according to the client, the needs can be different. You might work on one part of this, you might work on all three.
Correct.
Yeah, so
yes.
It's basically forming a package
exactly.
for the client's needs, right?
And
yeah.
It's different compared to smaller publishers. So Hachette is one of our clients, as is HarperCollins, as is Penguin Random House.
Ah, great.
Yeah, so they have very different needs because they have big teams and they've got marketing teams and IT teams all over the world, whereas a smaller to medium-sized publisher will need everything that we have.
Sure, exactly. Very interesting. Based where?
I'm based out of the UK. We're headquartered in the UK. Our parent company is out of the US and
right.
obviously, you know, the big ones in Japan.
Great, exactly. Okay, let's talk about, this sounds so meta here. Why innovate in publishing? I can't believe I have that in my notes, but it's an important question to ask because you see, we're going to talk about risk aversion, and you see inside some companies at times some real pushback from things. It is not always immediately apparent, is what I'm saying, why we need to innovate in publishing. And Anna, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think publishing has traditionally been seen as quite traditional and risk-averse. But as a base, historically, publishing is really a business based on innovation because every book is a prototype and no book is like another. So in that way, innovation has always been a part of publishing. And I think that's really important to remember as we think about this risk aversion. I think it's actually, we're more innovative than given credit for. Now we publish books in 3 formats. I would say that digital formats are no longer considered innovations. They're just our core business. And I think our role is really to try to appeal to as large of an audience as possible through innovation, as well as convert non-readers into readers and enlarge our audience. We do that editorially by varying the themes of books or the length or the ways of reading, but also through discovery and promotion. We used to buy ads in magazines to promote books, and now our editors are on TikTok and Instagram. So I think publishers are given less credit than they might deserve for the innovation that they do, and there is like tech is a part of all of our processes now, and I might be biased since we've had an innovation team for 10 years now, but yeah.
No, that's great. It's funny, too, because when you think about it, innovation is probably, at least immediately, as you first think, in two things. One is outward-facing, public-facing, and so one is inward-facing. It's what you might be doing internally with the company. And my guess, I may be wrong about this, but my guess may be that the internal can be a little more difficult because people really do, we all do, we're human, get set in our ways. And publishing has had many needs and reasons to speed up in recent years and in recent decades, really, as the digital media in particular came into the force so heavily. And I just wondered, are there times when you and your group, this may sound too dramatic, but are there times when you and your group have a really good innovation project we want to do, we take it into a department, we have our meetings, we talk to the team, are you ready to do this? And there's enough pushback that you just quietly withdraw from that project and try it 3 years later?
It's a good question. We've kind of adopted a push and pull method, so we meet with startups, and sometimes those will kind of prompt ideas for our team, and we'll approach sort of the imprint that we think it matches with and say, would you be interested in pursuing this? Sometimes the answer is no, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily risk aversion. It's maybe just it's not their focus right now or their strategy at the moment. Mm-hmm. We've had the most success, I would say, when the ideas come from the teams themselves and the operational teams that are going to be working on them, because that really creates motivation from them. And so things like the Hachette Innovation Challenge, which I mentioned earlier, I would say our greatest, most successful projects have been through that method, with having the engagement from the team, as well as obviously the agreement through the strategy and our management.
That helps me want to flip the question on its head, too. Are there times when a wonderful department you're dying to work with, they come up with this great idea, they present it to you, you're the team to innovate with them, how do we do this? And it's just a terrible idea. And you need to work with the group and say, why don't we work on a different approach? Are there times when it's really a matter of guiding the non-innovation specialists in the company toward what it is they're trying to reach?
Yeah, and I think, this is going to sound very American, but no idea is a bad idea.
Of course.
I think we have these, we have sort of criteria that we look at for our projects, and so I think there are just ideas that don't match those criteria necessarily. Primarily, I think so often where it doesn't align is that we often look for projects that are scalable across imprints and countries, and a lot of proposals that we get are very specific to a single book. And since we like to share learnings, we look for projects that we could really replicate elsewhere, either within the same business or across from the US to the UK or France. So yeah, I would say that's often where we would have to say no to a project.
Yeah, but that's nice because you're getting more bang for your buck, too, because with the experience of scaling tells you where something went last time, can this thing go that same place? That's really interesting. I think it's fascinating. Sarah, the same set of questions. I mean, if I asked you, if I said, well, why innovate? It sounds to me like a lot of what you're talking about is discoverability. There's a word we haven't said for a year and a half. I don't know why. Discoverability, remember that one? That sounds like what we're talking about, yeah?
Definitely, because I think when going back to your risk aversion question, it's interesting because, publishers are, well, in our experience, we're not inside a publisher. We service a publisher. We give publishers tools, software, services to help them sell books. So we're not an innovation lab within the publisher. So publishers, when we go with ideas of innovation, can be risk adverse because they're like, I don't know, budgets are tight, consumers are all over the place. So it's like, well, we kind of know this, so we're a bit risk averse to do this unless we know we'll get good return on investment.
I have seen in several companies I've worked with a tendency for the existing staff to feel, oh, we did that already and it failed. And of course, what you've actually just said may have nothing to do with what they did in the past. But a failure really sticks with a team, I think, with a staff. They just don't let go of it for until a very long time has gone by, and not very easily. They'll kind of cling to it almost as a shield. And sometimes you must hear some of that.
Yeah.
Like, we did that. Didn't work.
It's the familiarity
yes,
within
exactly.
a publisher, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. One of the questions I had when we were working together beforehand that always interests me is that when we talk about risk aversion, isn't it on both sides? Don't consumers actually set up barriers to you at times? We look at people who will not listen to an audiobook, or alas, they get the one narrator they didn't like, right? So they never go back and try something again. That's a very simplistic example. But the consumer base can get really set in its ways. And that depends on market. Some are much more adventurous than others. But I was really liking what we were hearing Michael Tamblyn saying this morning about how in Kobo they can detect the lower age brackets, 16 and younger, starting to look at ebooks, starting to look at audio, starting to look at digital much more. Because for a long time, that was a very hard one to crack. And we understood in childhood when families are trying to control digital consumption. But once the kids are out and they're still clinging to print, you wonder what this means. You don't know where it's taking us. So I found that interesting. Have you guys noticed this kind of thing at times in some of your efforts, that the outside was the one being averse to something?
Absolutely, yeah. Something you think that you're like, dead set, because they did that, it's going to work, and it completely tanks, and you're like, why? But then nowadays you have the data, so nothing's guesswork, really.
Right.
So, but yes, of course, because again, there's familiarity between consumers. It's like, as you say, oh, I don't like an audiobook, I like to have something tangible, I want to read it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting.
I know. Anna, have you seen this before too?
Yeah, I think especially as people are on their screens more and more, it's made the print book quite an escape from that, and I think that's why print remains so solid and probably always will be. But yeah, I think it's always surprising what formats different generations and people lean to, and it's always changing. So I think it's just offers us an opportunity to give them books in whatever format suits them, and we think of that as our role, just really getting books in front of people as much as possible in whatever format they choose to read in.
Yeah, because audiobooks are doing so well in so many markets around the world, particularly the English language markets. One of the things that I'm so interested in is that many, many years ago, a couple of decades ago, the problem was that we were looking at these hard cassettes. You remember those things with the tape that came out in the middle of the thing and it was all over your car? And now that it's downloadable, now that it's a digital product, it's been so much more acceptable to so many more people. And we're watching this very fast surge in some of the markets in terms of sales in audiobooks. So in a way, that's a case in which we could say to the consumer, you were wrong, you see. This is actually a good product. Audio can be fascinating to people who really enjoy it. But I can see this in myself when we're covering so many stories. I can feel resistance from the consumer base, from the readers themselves. Anna, tell us about some of your high points, and then if Sarah, you'll do the same thing and talk to us. A couple of things that really stand out in your mind that made sense in terms of what it is you do.
Okay. Yeah, so I've been on the team for 6 years now, so over the course of those 6 years, things have changed quite a bit, which is what makes innovation fun. We focused, one of the first focuses when I joined was on using data to become better publishers and to better understand our readers and our end consumers. On that topic, we ran a project for several years where we created this ecosystem where we offered free ebooks to readers, and in return, we tracked how they were reading those books. And in order to see how our books were landing, and we would A/B test covers or taglines. So that was a trend probably a couple of years ago. We had a phase where we focused quite a bit on immersive technologies, so AR, VR, and the metaverse, and we called this the future of storytelling. A project example there would be, I worked on a project for the past 2 years where we adapted a series of children's books into a Roblox game. Roblox is a video game platform that over half of kids in the US use daily. So we thought, let's meet kids where they are and see if we can learn from this, as well as maybe convert them into reading a book. And then we also look at new formats and new practices. So interactive audio, we launched some like choose your own adventure, Alexa skills, where the kid could interact with the story and go down different paths. We've looked a lot at personalization, which is a growing trend and becoming more powerful now with AI. And then, as you can imagine, most recently, the big focus has been on AI and automation. That's impacting, and it's been a seismic change for, I would say, almost every industry, and I think publishing is no exception. And while I would say creative uses of AI remain pretty sensitive, and we avoid those, we're looking at it for more operational use cases, so workflow automation, things as simple as meeting minutes to kind of take the drudgery out of people's work and give them more time to focus on the creative tasks at hand. So that's been our focus recently. So as you can see, it's pretty broad and changes based on the broader landscape.
It really does. One of the things that really strikes me when you're talking about this is AR and VR, because a lot of us who are not right in the center of this kind of thing as you are feel that something like that, this is kind of where you hear the, oh, we tried it and it didn't work thing, right? I think a lot of us who are at least in the press, following publishing all the time, sort of feel like AR was done and it didn't work, and so we're moving on. And VR, well, what are you going to do? They're in the bookstore with their headset on, right? I don't know. It never really seemed to pan out and get any traction. I had a parent tell me one time that they were using an AR book they were very excited about with the son. He watched the dinosaur stand up on the page and walk around about 11 times and never touched it again. And so that was good for the 11 times. There's nothing wrong with that. And the AR was apparently very good from what these parents felt, but particularly in children's, that can move quickly. And yet you're actually seeing applications of this that can be tried and developed and pushed forward to see if there's something there still.
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, a lot of innovation is failure, and I think, as you mentioned with those technologies, I think what we saw was that, first of all, people don't necessarily want to have their phone in front of the book to do the AR experience. It's not super natural. And VR, I think the issue is really that the headsets are very prohibitively expensive still, so it just isn't very a democratic way to reach people. I think those were good experiments to do, and I think eventually they might come back into play in a couple of years, and we learned a lot from them, so we feel kind of ready to address that trend if it does come back. But I would say right now we've kind of shifted focus away from this sort of metaverse area of innovation.
But it does reflect that point that I was talking about with audiobook too, that things come around. There can be a cyclical nature to some of these technologies, and some of the things we're trying to apply to publishing. You never know. We may be right back with our glasses on again soon.
Exactly.
It's kind of interesting. Sarah, tell me about a couple of your high points.
So, well, we have, because we are innovators and a software company, we have quite a few. I think two that I would probably point out, the first being, because we, as I said, we're not a publisher, so we almost have to persuade publishers to use our software and our services. Sure. We're like, please use us because we will help you sell books. Yeah. So we turn to the bookstores and we're like, what are bookstores doing to help publishers sell books? And how can we apply that online so we're talking the same language as a publisher? And we've taken so many learnings of that and managed to kind of adapt it online. So we do a lot of thought leadership, a lot of training of like how you use software to help sell books. So that would be the first one. The second thing is really on the e-commerce side and allowing or getting a step closer to allowing our publishers to do cross-border commerce. So that one-click purchasing, but really technology's there, it's just all the other stuff around it. Your book should be able to be sold in any format, in any language, and anywhere, to any person, anywhere in the world. Yeah.
With the EU Accessibility Act coming in on June 28, do you have clients who are asking you for some help on getting ready for that?
Yes, but we've been on top of that for a long time.
Great,
yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good, I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, that's a whole nother session.
It really is. What are some of the main challenges? I mean, what keeps you up at night, Anna, when you're thinking, oh, God, this could go so wrong because that's all wrong? What are the challenges that you know to face?
Yeah, I think one of the main ones is for all of publishing, but just the evolution of reading and how we're seeing that people are spending less time reading, both young people and older people. We have a lot of competition from all other forms of entertainment, so screen time is on the rise, and people are spending time on video games, social media, TV, movies, all of those are our competition. So I think that's a big challenge to try to get in front of readers and have them spend time with our books, and will force us to just be better at what we do and make sure that we're proposing books that are of interest to the right readers and getting them in front of them. I think another challenge as well as opportunity, as I had mentioned earlier, is AI. I think as was mentioned in the earlier session, in the self-publishing world, there's obviously been a flood of AI content, and I think the fear there is that readers will be overwhelmed by a choice that is too vast, and I think, again, that will force us to be better as publishers to make sure that it'll also make our jobs more important as curators and ensuring the quality of books to make sure that those readers can find a high quality, not fully AI generated book.
It's very interesting. Adam, what kind of challenges do you think are staring you in the face when you wake up in the morning?
Gosh, there are a lot.
I'm sure.
So I think, first of all, publishers have got a really hard job because they are responsible for content, they're responsible for storytelling, and now really they have to do marketing. And we had a whole session about this yesterday in Segovia of it's not really something a publisher usually has access to or know much about. So it's kind of a gap within their organizations of how do I market myself, my books, to my consumers, and building up strong sales strategies so that they've got the community, they've got the consumers, they've got the brand loyalty because it increases conversions. So I think that's a challenge. I think secondly, another challenge is for publishers is money. I think money, uncertainty around everything, as we work in the North American market, so publishers are like, I don't know about my return on investment there, so I'm not sure if I want to spend the money there. Yeah.
No, I'm sure you're seeing more and more of that. And in fact, speaking of that, one of the things that I'm curious about is whether, Anna, this probably comes into your jurisdiction more, do you ever innovate specifically on a political issue, a political question, a political position? So many of our major publishers, as we all know, have found that, particularly in the nonfiction area, when they start doing plenty of political work, what happens is, of course, the blowback comes in from whatever side feels offended, from whatever side isn't excited about it. And it can be very difficult on a company in the corporate setting. This is very hard on the staff as well as on management. Is there innovation that can come into this? Are there ways that you can look at something like where a publisher stands in the zeitgeist of the society that you can help with?
Yeah, I think firstly at Hachette, decentralization and making sure that our imprints have full editorial control over their lists is really key and a big part of our DNA as a company, and we make sure to stand by that. In terms of your question on our team addressing political issues, we really position ourselves as innovation supporters instead of innovation owners. Right. We're just 6 people helping 7,000 employees worldwide who are really innovating and experts in all of their various jobs. And so our role is really to create sort of a fertile ground for innovation for them and help them innovate, but they are already innovating without us, and not every innovation project goes through us by any means. So we have teams in our various territories that all have different, very complex political situations, but we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion team and corporate social responsibility teams who innovate in those areas and can also apply their more local lens of that country onto these questions. So I don't have a specific project I can speak to, but I would be happy to do one with those teams. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting. I think there's a lot of potential in that. Some of you know Nihar Malavia, who is the CEO of Penguin Random House, and during some of the hottest moments of book banning in the United States, unfortunately, he will send out what he calls his banned book, his bandwagon, B-A-N-N-E-D. And it's full of books that have been banned. He'll send it into one of the southern states, which is usually where the heaviest of our book bannings seem to be originating. And he'll give out free banned books from bookstores. Stop with that thing, hand them out to readers, make sure it's getting across. That, to me, is quite innovative. It's a wonderful way to just get right on into the fray, and say, we're not afraid of it. Here are the books. These are, of course, PRH books, but he has a huge list of banned books at PRH. And it's quite interesting. And that's a one-off. I mean, it's not something that another company might ever want to do or think about. But it's great, and I think that we're probably moving into an era of deeper and deeper political conflict. And so the more publishers think about this and how they can address it in a way that may actually advance what they're trying to do, that's so good and not seen as that, the better things are going to be. We'll take a moment here for questions. We have about 5 minutes left, as long as somebody may want to get up and ask something. Let me ask about one last thing. We heard earlier this morning a concern about so much of development and evolution in publishing being for young readers. And of course, this makes perfect sense because the pedagogical system is there. The hierarchy is there, the school system is there, and we need the future audience. As Michael again was saying, the current audience is aging. But at the same time, I worry sometimes that this is a journalist's impression, remember, but I worry from the outside that publishing is putting so much emphasis on the young future audience that the voters are not being talked to. It's not the kids doing the voting that is coming up with some very strange results in certain countries. It's the adults who have wandered away from reading, wandered away from literature, and I don't see things to bring them back. Is there any room in anything that you guys have seen? Has there been any effort to say, why don't we address the adults who are now watching Netflix and nothing else?
Yes. So
Good.
if you go to the political questions, there's something that's kind of been quite pushed far down the agenda, which was quite far up the publisher's agenda, was sustainability. And kind of ethical decision making, which is the older audience, but also that's kind of middle generation as well, that are voters, that are purchasers, that are consumers. And I think that needs to be rethought.
I think so too. I think it's something to look at. I mean, you guys are the experts in this, but to me, there is a way that this can be thought through and perhaps pushed forward at a time when so many adults have stopped reading, you know, and television production is awfully good these days. Did we have a question before we finish up? I can't see very well. We have some bright lights up here. I don't think I see anything. All right, then. Well, I'd like to thank both of our guests. Anna, Sarah, you guys have been wonderful. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attention and your time. And we are done for this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.